Hello, everyone, and welcome to the fourth installment of our series, Unreasonable Founders, No Plan B. Today, I'm joined by two people who have fundamentally shaped my own journey as an investor and a strategic advisor, Juan Rodriguez and Eliseo Diaz, the co-founders of Flash. So I've been an investor in Flash since 2012. And while many look at their billion-dollar valuation today as a success story, for me, the real story happened much earlier than that. You guys were the first founders who truly taught me the difference between being rich and being king. In the world of investors, being king is about control and ego, but you two chose to be rich, a metaphor for building a high growth, high value engine that could actually change an industry. You were willing to give up the throne, so to speak, in 2016 to bring in leadership that you needed to chase an impossible future. That choice, combined with the original promise to me that there was no plan B, is why Flash is a unicorn today. But before the valuations and the private equity rounds, there were these two friends in the Dominican Republic, and I'd like to start there. So you guys were childhood friends. You were friends long before you were business partners. Tell me and the people watching this, what was a typical day for you two growing up in the Dominican Republic? Was there any early hustle or project that you did together as kids?
You want to kick it off? So we were friends, kind of. So Eliseo, is a little bit older than me, and I had an older cousin. And I would spend time at my cousin's house, and he would be there. We were playing basketball, doing all that kind of stuff. And this one, and my cousin used to smack me, the back of my head and be like, "Go get me some water." And there I was, "Yeah, don't hit me," sort of thing. So that's really our history in DR was very short, 5 years when I'm 7 and he's 13 or whatever. That's a big difference, right? I knew of him while we were in DR and we were in the same space, but I was a little kid and he was, a teenager. So that's really
Yeah, and then you have to fast forward where we did meet again in the U.S. and then that took a little bit of a different set on the story of how we ended up working together.
yeah. So we both spent some time in the army, and one day my mother, I was still I was going to night school. And obviously, when you're in the army, you're full time, and then at night I was trying to get my degree. I get a call from my mom. Says, "You remember Eliseo?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do remember him. I still have PTSD from this guy."
She-
Yeah, and she's like, "He's gonna be there like this week or something. Why don't you guys go and have dinner?" And that's how we reconnected back in, gosh, 20, 2001,
yeah, that.
something like that. I was still, yeah, 2001, 2002, somewhere around there. And then, we started talking. I'm like, "Hey, I'm about to get out of the army. I did this in the Pentagon, blah, blah, blah. I'm doing some computer stuff. This is amazing. Oh, power of the stuff can do." And he's like, "I'm selling software in Latin America." And then that was kind of the sparks, like, "Hey, maybe we should do something together." And by the way, Dean is not here, who's our third
Yeah.
co-founder. He's also in New Zealand. So I moved him from New Zealand to help build Flash. And then he did a bunch of years here, and he's been back in New Zealand for a few years now. So I just want to make sure we don't forget about Dean.
Yeah. Can't forget about Dean. He was a big part of the story. For the two of you, when you were growing up in the Dominican Republic, obviously it's a very different environment than being over here in the U.S. Was there anything in particular that you can remember or that you can think of, even when you were growing up, whether you were together or apart, that prepared you for founding a new technology company in a foreign country like the U.S.?
Well, prepare me, probably no, but the majority of my family, especially my grandmother, she ran a business. My grandmother, my grandfather. So this concept of you going to school and getting a job that's not what I saw growing up. Basically, the majority of my family members, they work for themselves. So I guess maybe we can call that preparation, or we can call that kind of, I don't know, the journey that you should follow. I'm not sure what you call it, but there wasn't preparation, right? None of them went to another country and started businesses there. But it was like, hey, you wake up, you figure out what you're going to do, and then you do it and you work for yourself. You don't go to school and you go make money for something else. That's really not the MO.
I mean, I didn't know it at the time, but I did work in the summers with my dad. He has his own business, and it sort of prepared me without me knowing it at the time for what entrepreneurship is. The ups and downs, the risk taking, all of the things that come with it. I think it's something that it did carry with me when I moved to the U.S. and still instill in me when I'm building a new business or even helping somebody else start a new company or a new idea. So yeah, I did some of that did carry over from my early days working with my dad.
Gotcha. So you grew up in the Dominican Republic knowing of each other, being around each other, then kind of split off, went your own ways. Interestingly, sounds like just coincidentally, you both ended up in the Army. Not sure if that was a coordinated activity. It doesn't sound like it.
No.
That was just a coincidence. And then you met back up around 2001 or so, and then ended up in Miami together. So how did that happen? Do you just have a conversation? You decide, hey, we should get together and live together and let's do it in Miami?
I was already living in Miami doing sales for
Okay.
communication software. And once my mom lived in Miami, well, his family, and so he ended up moving back from DC to Miami, and then we ended up meeting in the weekends, just throwing ideas and so on, and that's a really I mean, he was really the fire starter. I was really comfortable where I was. I was doing big sales for big companies, so 27-year-old at the time, I think it was doing okay. I wasn't complaining, but he had the spark that he wanted to get something started, and he doesn't like doing sales. Well, at the time he didn't. I think now he's a pretty good sales guy. And he's kind of like recruited me, like, "Hey man, why don't we get together? Why don't we try to figure something out?" And that's really what kicked it off.
So I think, yeah, that there's. I want to go back and answer one question that I didn't answer correctly about preparing for entrepreneurship and so on. In 1986, my mom went to New York and brought me a Nintendo, and I was the only kid in the street that had a Nintendo, and I liked it, playing Duck Hunt and all this stuff. And then, like 2 weeks into it, I was running an arcade out of my grandmother's living room. That only lasted a couple of weeks because the kids were stealing the quarters, from their parents and so on. But anyway, so that now that I think about it, I'm like, yeah, maybe this started as a young, as I was young, thinking, hey, this is actually something that I kind of enjoy. So I didn't want to forget about that. But fast forwarding after I got out of the Army, went back to Miami. We kept that took like 2 years from the time that I got out, and we were in communication the time that I'd moved back to Miami. And what we decided to do is on Sundays, we met up at my mom's office. We had a whiteboard, and we would brainstorm on different ideas that we can bring to life. And I don't remember all the things that we put up on the board, and we would be like, okay, blah, 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 this is what we would need to do. And then we would, that didn't work, and we'd come back another Sunday. And eventually, the first one that we did together, it used to be called insurancebyagents.com. And I looked at my mother as an insurance agent, and she started, this is when like progressive is, hey, go online and you can kind of buy your own insurance. And I look at my mom and I'm like, man, you're gonna die like tomorrow. Like the minute people start doing this, like you're not gonna have a job. And then I looked at all her friends that are agents and the thousands of agents around, Florida and the US. And I'm like, what's gonna happen to all of them? So we decided to do insurancebyagents.com, which is just a lead generation portal where people put in all their information, and then we would distribute that over to to the agents, and they can provide a quote, and they can stay relevant, and not just have Progressive, which I think was the only one at the time that you could actually do it online. So that's the first one that we kind of did together. So we bootstrapped it. At this time, he still had an amazing job. I had a okay job, and we would work at nights on the weekends. We kept our jobs, and we started building this. And I remember going to a show, like a insurance conference, and we literally went to Walmart, bought a TV, and we did the slides on the way to Orlando to the show. And we had a line of people signing up for this. They're like, "Yeah, I want to leak off the internet, all this stuff." So it was fun.
What year was that?
That must have been 2003 or 4.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or 5.
Yeah,
Somewhere.
really, really early. Yeah.
Yeah.
What I find interesting about that, two parts of your story really resonated with me personally, and I think about this quite a bit when I sort of reflected on why I got into my own career as well, and a similar story. But it's interesting to me to hear that you can think about it and relate to how you got to where you are from what happened as a child, right? And so I try to explain this to my kids. When I was 6 years old, I wanted nothing more than a CB radio, Citizens Band radio. At the time, that was wireless communication. That was in. Let's see, I'm going to age myself. I was 6, so it was 1968, and so my mom, who was a teacher, scraped together money, and for $25, she bought me a UCB radio and had it installed in her car. And I used to go sit in her car, hot or cold, didn't matter if I was freezing, and talk to my friends for hours on that CB radio. And fast forward later on, it didn't really connect with me until later in life that I spent 18 years of my life in the cellular telecommunications business. And working with teams of people to invent roaming, cellular roaming, and invent intercarrier text messaging. And so, it's not something that you really think about when you get into it. Like, hey, I'm going to go into the cellular business because I used to love CB radios, or I'm going to go into the computer business because I used to love video games in an arcade. But a lot of it makes total sense. And similarly to you, when you tell the story about your mother and the insurance, my mom, as I got older, probably when I was maybe 30 or so, my mom was a traveling salesperson, old fashioned, throw samples in the car, drive all over a 5-state area and sell to these little boutiques, luggage made by a company in San Antonio called John Hart Design. And I remember saying to her one day, and she used to fill out these forms that were like 4-part forms, where you have to press it and then put it in an envelope, and she had to mail it. And that was the order. And I said, Mom, I don't understand why they don't sell these things on the internet. Why can't people just log in, pick a bag, and have it shipped to them? And she said, oh, no, honey, people don't do that. And I said, that business is going to fail at some point. And so luckily for her, she aged out and got retired. But yeah, it's interesting how very much in a parallel with your own story about those cases, about how you think about what was going on with me as a child and what did I gravitate towards and what did that become as a career for me.
And that fits right in with your e-commerce.
With e-commerce as well. Yes, it all came into that too. And that, the e-commerce part of it was I was working in the mobile payment space. That was at the time I was working at Tabbed Out with the ATX innovation team, who you guys know. And I just kept seeing e-commerce growing and growing and growing. And I thought I just need to be a part of this somehow. And so it's the same way I felt about mobile payments, although Tabbed Out was early because at the time there was no Apple Pay. So making a mobile payment using your phone at the point of sale was just foreign to a lot of people. You guys know that. You were also in the fintech space. And so, yeah, it's just kind of interesting how you can kind of see it a little bit ahead of time, but similarly to you guys, I'm the kind of person where I just want to be in it. As I said, before we started, I don't want to be involved in predicting the future. I want to be involved in inventing the future. And that's way more fun to me. So let's talk about Flash a little bit. I'm going to jump forward a little bit beyond how you got to Austin and all that, but I mean, that's part of the story. But Look, most people see it as a parking garage. It's just a place to have your car. Last night I went to a Capital Factory event. I parked at the Omni. You guys know Flash Parking is there and has been one of your customers for a long, long time. You guys see it as a mobility hub. So beyond the hardware, what exactly is the platform that you built, and how does it change the way that a city actually breathes?
That is a very, very loaded question, and I think I'm gonna try to answer it where anybody that's watching can understand it, and not and try not to get too technical. But feel free to poke me, and we can go deeper. But Flash, I guess in layman's term, we can say that we are a cash register that does revenue control for any type of parking that you may do. And if you think about it, like you went to Capital Factory at the Omni, you ended up pulling up to a machine, you press the button, got a ticket, or you use your credit card as a ticket, or you could have made a reservation in advance and prepay for your time, and the license plate recognition reader would have read your plate and the game just popped up. And then on X, just pay with your card, or your license plate would have read it, or you could have used, I'm not sure if you're an Express Pay member of ours, which basically means you just tied your credit card to your license plate. And everywhere we have this enabled, you just fly in and fly out. You come in, the gate opens, you leave, the gate, opens, and you just get a text with an email. So that's an aspect of what we've done, right? But we have parking that is done at a stadium, parking that is done for monthly parkers, for example. So just think about every type of parking that there is. We have an app for it. We have hardware for it. We have the back end reporting for it. All of the compliance things from a PCI standpoint for it. So we are powering. I think we're at more than 17,000 locations in the U.S. and Canada now. I think we are somewhere around 20% of the paid parking facilities. So this is massive, and this is
Airports.
yeah. If you think about all the airports, yeah. So it's just think about anywhere where you can pay for parking. We have a platform that not only does the revenue control for the people that are paying as transients, but the most complex part of it is actually the non-transients. What is a non-transient? It could be a pilot for an airline going to an airport that they're not paying every time they come in and out. Somebody else is paying. Maybe Southwest Airline is paying at Denver Airport for this pilot to come in, or this flight attendant. And the revenue management of that is more complex than you coming in and saying, hey, you were here for 2 hours, pay me. So the complexity of that, or the complexity of Texas Medical Center in Houston, where you have 50,000 people going into these facilities to getting an operation, and you have to manage the validations. You got to manage that this doctor can park anywhere, this nurse can only park here, and if they exceed 6 p.m., we have to charge them extra. So it's a way to build access control and revenue control for any parking asset. And then when you use the word mobility hub, well, people are not just necessarily parking in this garage, right? We're doing EV charging as well. We're doing a lot of other digital things inside this, where think about Uber needing to charge their vehicles. That's something that ride shares can use through the platform. So there's a lot of different things that you do with this asset, and we just work with the asset owners or the parking operators, and we are the operating system that allows you to do this. Think about Windows, and you can run PowerPoint, and you can run Outlook. We are the Windows of parking that allows all of these different things. If you wanted to prepay for parking using ParkWiz, somebody has to let you in and out. I don't know if I'm missing something.
Yeah, no, I mean it's a combination of a digital platform with all the hardware complexity. With each one of these venues has different different things that you have to work with. The way that it's managed, the way that it's processed, all these things come into one platform that is managed through Flash. And so your question goes, how does that impact the city? Yeah, there's a lot of different ways also that this have an impact into a particular city. Like we have some programs that are actually just strictly dedicated to helping cities manage some of the flow of traffic with Uber drivers, with deliveries. It's really, the level of complexity when you put it all together, it gets even higher. And having this platform that allows you to not only do the revenue control, but also manage the influx, all these things, is where Flash has really come in and made a in particular impact in the world of in the industry of parking.
And we have to build a lot of APIs to connect with other hundreds and hundreds of APIs, because also you want to know capacity, right? So like for a city, they want to publish that I've got 12 garages in downtown, Las Vegas or whatever city is that's using Flash. And then you want to tell people in advance that this one's full. Don't even try coming here, right? Go to this one. So we provide APIs that the cities and the venues, anyone can actually use to figure out the occupancy, pricing, and so on at all those different facilities.
And as you know, Kev, being one of our early investors, we started with the hospitality side of the house, right? With the valet parking, all that. So the guest experience is also a big component of what Flash tries to deliver every day when we are there. So that's also one thing that it's embedded into our DNA because that's how we started, and it's progressed through the history of Flash, making sure that the guest experience is something that is unique from the time that you get there to the time that you leave. So that's also one of the key uh, um, things that we always look to bring into the mix of things that we provide to the operators.
And
Yeah.
he ended up, starting on the side, then we moved to parts and acronym parking access revenue control system. And those are the gates and the machines. And then, we ended up raising some money, a lot of money actually, and we bought 12 companies. So this is not something that we built from scratch. We didn't have the time to do this. So we ended up gathering the best of breeds to be able to create this collective. There isn't anything in the world, that you can say, hey, who do you compete with? I can give you 300 people that we compete with. But if you say, who can you compete with that does 100% of what you do? There isn't that animal hasn't been born yet.
Yeah. Well, it is complex and it's multifaceted. And so sometimes it's just, as you pointed out, it's easier to show somebody rather than to explain it to them. So I had the fun opportunity to do that where in the summertime, I live in central Colorado. And so I went to go pick up my in-laws at the Eagle Vale Airport and had been trying to explain to my father-in-law what Flash was. And so we go to check out and I'm like, see, this is what it is right here. And he's like, I get it. Like, and he sees the brand name on there at the Eagle Vale Airport. And so, yeah, to your point, because of the prevalence of Flash, I've been at the Denver airport, which of course is massive in terms of the installation that you guys did there and the amount of work that went into that. And then Eagle Vale Airport's pretty small. But they found it was important for them to have the same kind of advanced technology that even the Denver airport had, even for a small airport. And so, yeah, it was fun to be able to show it to him because it like the light bulb went off. But as you said, that was just a almost a fraction of what you do. So we talked a little bit about the what of it is, and you touched on it just a bit, but um, I think people want to understand maybe a little bit deeper. So it started off, as I remember right, with some frustration with valet parking in Miami at a hospital. And if I got that part right, so
Hotel.
At a hotel. All right. So you chose to dedicate 14 plus years of your life to the parking industry, partly because of that, right? There was a stop along the way and then ultimately. So um, it's an industry that a lot of people ignore, right? It's one of those things where obviously when you guys got into it, it had not been disrupted in any way. It was, if I remember right, it was Amano, a French company that had owned that industry for many years as a premise-based solution. And, you still, even back then, you got your ticket, you went to go check out, and there was a elderly woman there reading a book who would, take your money, and all of that has changed a lot. So, but what is the bigger impact that you wanted to have on urban life and technology? I mean, obviously the vision was bigger than that. it started off with independent valet parking companies. And, there was even some disruption, if I remember right, back then, which is the parking lot owners were rolling up these assets in order to support their own parking lot facilities that were not necessarily across the street from the venue. So Flash originally facilitated that so they could have an asset where they park cars further away because of the way the technology worked. But you guys had a bigger vision in terms of the urban life and the technology. And can you say more about that, what you thought it was even back then?
Yeah, so I think we need to basically tell how we got into creating Flash, which is actually his wife was the person that you mentioned that was working for a hotel. She provided services to hotels where I think they washed sheets or something. So she was the account manager. She would go and meet with
Housekeeping.
housekeeping or the GM of the hotel, and she would say, "Hey, look, we're going to pick up all this loads of laundry. We're going to bring them back tomorrow, the next day, whatever that is." But during that time, most of these hotels, like 90% of them, were valet only. So she was valeting 15 or so times per day. And when we would have dinner, as we were brainstorming of what we're going to do next, um, she would come to us and say, "Okay, you guys just send a text message the other day to a phone number in Brazil, and you move US dollars to reais, and somebody was able to use a prepaid debit card in Brazil and buy something. All I want you to do is go tell that valet guy to go pick up my car, and I want to pay and tip for my phone." And that sounded, I'm like, look, we're moving money around the world. Telling that guy to go pick up my car, like, that's just not,
Sounds too basic.
yeah, not that sexy. So for many months, we were brainstorming. We have like all of these 5 other projects that we wanted to do, and we wanted 5 projects. And we're like, well, let's do Daniela's valet thing. That's what we call it. That was the project name. And basically, that was it. We were gonna what she wanted was, I would like to request my car, notify the guy that I need to, that I'm leaving. I want to pay the valet fee, and I want to tip this guy because at that time she's going to the ATM of that hotel, and the $8 fee to use that ATM, and then your bank will charge you another $5 for using a non-bank, not her bank's ATM. So she's already out $12, so she has to pay this guy $5 tip and a $10 valet fee. So now this is turning to $30 for her, sort of thing, right? So anyway, so we have dinner. Daniela, how you doing? She's like, "I'm doing great. How's your job?" "My job is great, but I really still hate valet parking." This was a constant, weekly or monthly conversation. So we decide to add the 5th, Daniela's project. Then we went to wealthy guys like you and say, "Hey, which one of these 5 would do you think will be successful? And which one would you, help fund?" And 10 out of 10, all these guys and gals, they all valet. I was too poor to valet, so I never had that problem. When I had to valet, it was not an issue for me because I'm like, I pay them, I only did it once a year and it was great. I didn't have to go get my car. So for her, it was a big pain point. For this other wealthy people, it also was a big pain point. And we're like, oh, maybe there's something there. Let's dig deep.
And like you say, it was a low hanging fruit from the perspective of technology as well. So we could bring in a lot of stuff that was new. The cloud,
Yeah, that exists.
texting. We were like Twilios that were
Like
one of the
4th customer.
for customers. I mean,
Yeah.
think about that. We still have calls with Twilio directly, like on a weekly basis back then.
I went to dinner in 6th Street with the CEO, with the founder of Twilio.
Yeah.
I mean,
So,
Now
yeah.
everybody uses it for all their tech, right? For
Yeah,
anything.
exactly.
Yeah. So these were things that we were bringing into an industry that have been kind of forgotten because all these guys that were running the show, they didn't need to do anything special. So we came in with new technology. Timing was perfect. Also, people started using their phones. Texting and doing things in your phone became more of a natural aspect of your normal life. So also that helped. I always say you have to have a little bit of timing, luck, and a lot of hard work. But when those 3 come together,
Yeah.
beautiful things can happen. And we happen to just be at the right time, at the right place, with the right
Yeah.
technology.
Cool. Thank you for sharing that. That's an amazing story. So I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into your relationship together, but I want to kind of go back in time. If I got the dates right, I think it was in 2016, you faced a crossroads. You had a profitable business that you could have just lived off of and had, I think at the time, the terminology that was used was mailbox money. Some people said, look, let's just keep this thing going. It's profitable, it's growing, it's doing all right. But you guys were the first founders that I've ever met who voluntarily gave up your titles to bring in outside leadership like Dan and Sam. How did, if you can remember, how did that feel at the time in terms of your own egos with each other, in terms of being able to say, and this goes back to the statement of being rich versus being king? And again, just to clarify, when I say the word rich, I am using the financial aspect of rich, but I'm also using it as a metaphor for something bigger, right? That you want to go grow something and you feel like has a lot more potential to get bigger and bigger, rather than being at the top of the heap and saying, I have to be the CEO. I have to be the chief revenue officer or whatever that is. And so how did that feel in the moment, and how did that work between the two of you, if there's any of that was going on at the time in terms of those conversations?
I think we should probably back up a little bit and talk about how we pivoted into from ballet to parks and what that process looked like. It was a very successful business that we had, but we wanted more, and we thought there could be more. We were entitled to more, right?
Yeah, I think we were growing really fast. First of all, on the valet side, when we wanted to do just request your car and pay and tip, that did not go very well. So we had to pivot, and then we became kind of like Square was to the coffee shops. We became the Square equivalent for valet. So we had a point of sale on your mobile phone for valet, and that thing started going crazy. I mean, this guy is like, man, I used to work at Dell, and people would call me to buy it. Here, Flash, all of a sudden now, this is like Dell. People are calling me to freaking, buy this thing. So we kind of went through that cycle. And then as we're talking to our valet customer, they're saying that they have all these problems with parks. And then that's what kind of triggered, hey, we can do this. And we kind of said, if we stay in the valet side, this company's, revenue would probably be 20 million max or something like that, whatever the number was. If we move over to parks, this could be hundreds and hundreds of millions, because that's really where people pay for. So that was kind of one of the things that we decided to kind of make that move. And as that happened, we find ourselves with a very complex company. It wasn't just, hey, buy an iPhone and I'm gonna mail you a credit card where you probably plug into your iPhone, and then over the phone I'm gonna onboard you, and then you can go live that same day. That is something that you can do with 10 people, 20 people, whatever. When we started getting into parks is a lot more complicated because it has zero downtime, right? You can't just, if your phone runs out of battery, you can still do valet with your tickets and manually, and the consequences are not that complex. But if the Denver airport, if, they do $1 million a day or so, every second counts. So parks is more complex, not only on keeping it up, but also on the installation. And now we have to build equipment, we have to ship equipment, and we have to install it, and we have to commission it. So as we're going through this, we definitely knew for sure that we had product market fit. But I'm getting to a point where we can grow. We were growing okay, but we could only grow as much as we had capital to invest, because now we have to, buy these machines or fabricate these machines. And as you can imagine, shipping them, installing them, having electricians on site doing projects. It's like a mini construction project all over the US. And one is in, in Austin, the other one is in San Diego, the other one's in Houston. So you needed capital to do this. So we could have continued to grow as a profitable business, little by little. And right now, we could have been, 50 employees, and life would have been okay. But I'm like, hey, if we do this, people are going to catch up because we were the first one on the cloud. We were the first one with the touchscreen. We were the first one with mobile payments. Like you said, we disrupted this industry significantly, leading the way on all these things. And we decided, okay, if we can get some smart money, because a lot of people wanted to give us money at that point, that wasn't an issue. But I didn't feel comfortable bringing people that genuinely haven't done it before. So I didn't want just an investor that went to get an MBA and is now able to read a P&L and be like, okay, I'm going to invest in this business and then come every week and see how's the business going. That wasn't appetizing to me. So when you're talking about Sam and Dan, I'm looking at two super successful post exit, not once, but multiple times, founders that understood what we were going through. Like when I talk to Sam, he can finish my sentences, right? And then as Sam brings that in and says, hey, this guy just did, 15,000 installation nationwide. I'm like, tell me more about that because I'm tired of doing those myself. And I don't ever want to do one of those myself. Now, the good thing is I did the first 50-ish by myself. I flew all over the nation with an electrician crew, and we bolted down and we went to Home Depot and we rented a saw and we cut loops on the ground and we ran wire and we did all of this stuff. The good thing is that nobody can BS me and be like, oh, I can't do that in 2 days or whatever. I'm like, yes, you can. I did it here and there, and this is how you do it. So that was good. But that was not what I wanted my life to do.
You can scale that way. Sorry.
Couldn't scale, couldn't be home with my kids, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So Saul is like, hey, we took our time because we were very capital efficient as we were, growing because I didn't want to have a gun to my head. I wanted to have options for us to do what we wanted to do. So when Sam and Dan came over, we were in a good spot where if they wanted to write a check and join the company, great. If they did it, it didn't matter. It wasn't going to impact us financially. It wasn't like I needed to raise another round. We didn't have that pressure because we had done a good job until now. And product market fit was amazing. I mean, people were sending us 50% down deposits and they were getting in a queue. Now, it would take us 6 weeks, 8 weeks to do projects. After we built this machine, I mean, we can do projects in 2 weeks anywhere in the nation. It's pretty remarkable for us to be able to build this equipment, ship it, install it, and onboard it, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, so going back, Sam was able to understand all the pain points that I had, including Jan as well. And I felt very certain that we were going to gain speed, significant speed, because it wasn't about the money. I was going to be able to get money if I wanted to from there, but it was going to be like, Sam is going to come in and we're going to be able to build this team. And instead of taking that team 2 years to build, we were going to build it in freaking 3 months. Dan came in and he's like, look, I don't want you to ever worry about inflation again. Like, go fix something out from the business. But if this is your biggest point, because he's like, what's your biggest point? I'm like, this. He said, no, what's your next biggest point? I'm like, I don't want to talk about anything other than this, because shipping this thing and getting them installed, it's a pain in the butt. So those were things that I felt very comfortable that I can release these functions to them and that they were going to do it 500 times better than we would. So that's really kind of the mathematical equation and the risk that we took. It wasn't just some guy off the street. We did a lot of research on them and called a lot of people. Hey, would you ever do business with Sam? And it's like, wow, this guy. And then I spent a lot of time with them as well. And we didn't kind of gave each other a little bit there to understand who to get better with.
Yeah. And the question of, making that transition from owning, running the business and doing all that, I did kind of like the same thing. I engaged my number one competitor is the guy from Amman. So let me read it. Hold on. So in discussing, how difficult was the transition from what we were doing, running the business, me as a CRO and all the things that we're managing as entrepreneurs and the founders. For me, it was clear that in order for get to the next level, we needed to get the right people. So what did I do? I went and found my number one competitor, the Amano company. They had the number one guy. We happened to just see each other once in a while. I knew of him, and we really connected. And when it was time for me to make a decision on who could I bring in, that was the perfect selection. And he just happened to also really engage with us because he's also, from foreign for another country. So he kind of really connect with us right away. And that was a natural step for me to, hey, you're more capable. You've already done this. This company is growing at a speed that I can even, comprehend. And, making that transition wasn't that difficult. It was actually probably the best thing that I've done as a founder to find someone that can actually do it better.
A professional looking,
Mhm.
yeah. We're ringing. Yes, I would do that. Can we go, can I still go close a deal? Yes. Can he go and build a team? He could, but he's going to make some mistakes that this other guy would, right? And those are the things that we talked a lot about. This guy that he's talking about, he's from South Africa. We literally, he's out of Tampa, and we spent the weekend at his house and said, "Hey, let's go talk about this." And he just entertaining us. We're like, "We're not leaving until you say yes." And then we brought his wife over to Austin, got her involved. She was helping us close this guy. I mean, it was, those are things that we're good at that, right? I wouldn't say that, that back then I was good at hiring 1,000 people and getting the trains to run on time. I mean, I think I can do that now if I had to do it again, but I would have made a lot of mistakes if I didn't have this other people around me that is like, hey, don't do that. This is why, do this.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I only have one question because I want you guys to enjoy the snow too, but I want to make a comment about that. Two quick things. One is I still remember the dive bar that was next to your office near the UT campus that we met at. And I think it was Juan said, "Here, I got to show you something." And it was next door, like an empty space or something. And you had a prototype of the park system set up, and you showed it to me. And I was like, at the time, I remember thinking, this is completely different than what you've been doing. This is amazing on some levels, but scary. Because, as you said, you had a track record of success and growth and profitability, and you were willing to make that big bet, the next big change, right? But yeah, I remember that space, and I remember going in there. It's one of those things I reflect on. I should have taken like a video of it or something and be like, this would be like in the archives of Flash at some point. Like this was the first one. I'm sure you have pictures of it. But before I get to the next question, one of the things I just wanted to point out is the story that you're telling. One of the reasons why I chose the title of Unreasonable Founders, No Plan B. By the way, the No Plan B came from you guys. I don't know if you ever said that or I just remembered it that way, but I think that's what you said to me one time.
I think we used the analogy about forgot those guys that went to, was it Spain, and they burned the boats? The Moors.
Yeah.
I think that's what we meant when we said we have no plan B. We're like, hey, we're going to make this happen, rain or shine.
There's
Yeah.
no going.
It's what I look for now in founders, right? Because you got to be all in on this. It can't just be a side hustle. The other thing about the idea of unreasonable founders, just to connect some of these dots about what you were saying about some of the pieces that all came together to make it work. I look at a framework. Some would refer to it as the 3 I's, which is inflection, idea, and invention. And the idea there is that there's some inflection point that occurs. Somebody has an idea and then you invent something. And so the inflection points for Flash were things like Twilio for SMS, mobile phone usage, mobile payments. The company wouldn't be around if these inflection points didn't happen. But what it takes is founders to really take all these inflection points and put them together in a mental construct or an idea, and then invent something new, right?
Connect the dots for sure.
Yeah. And so mobile payments, text messaging, cloud computing, all of those things had to come together. And you can think of so many examples right today around things like AI related to that. where that is a big inflection point. It's creating all these ideas, and at some point people are inventing all these different things. But I love thinking about it in that way, because in the moment, I think most people don't really think of it that way. They don't think, oh, these inflection points, I'm going to go, I have this idea for something and I'm going to invent something. They just sort of notice all these trends, right? Because even when you did it, as you pointed out, you met with the founder and CEO of Twilio, or very early stage idea. As we talked about just a little bit ago, mobile payments wasn't really much of a thing back then. It has emerged pretty significantly since then. And cloud computing, of course, was pretty progressed at that point, but it has taken off a lot since then, and almost everything everybody does now is related to that. So, all right. Last question, which is
Something I like to point out about that
okay. Go
as well
ahead.
is that also from the customer side, there were some leaders from these large operators that were willing to take risks, right? Because without the customer saying yes, we wouldn't be here either, right? So that really played a big part on our success, is having the leadership from those particular companies that took a risk on, these guys that are like startup, and they're running, you know, large enterprise businesses.
Yeah.
And so having that, that leap of faith also is a big contributor to why we're here today.
Yeah, and we help those customers as well, trying to de-risk it for them as much as possible. So in the industry, in the parking industry, we invented software as a service in parking that didn't exist. We invented hardware as a service that didn't exist as well. So we kind of minimize the risk, and we help them as much as we could to say yes. And then once they saw it, they're hooked.
Yeah, I think the amazing thing about that is, as I mentioned maybe early on, a lot of people wouldn't necessarily draw the connection between someone in the parking industry as being innovative risk takers. And so you happen to find the right people that were willing to take that bet on you as founders and the technology that you had created. But that's pretty unique, right? Because they also, somebody in that industry also recognized that they needed to get busy thinking about the future and the technology, or they were going to get disintermediated in some way as well by others. And so, yeah, pretty amazing. So, all right. So you've gone from childhood friends in the DR to Miami to founders of $1 billion engine. As individuals, what's the next thing for you guys? What is it that you want to do next? Anything you can share about how that what that looks for the two of you?
I think for me, it's always passing it forward. When we first moved to Austin, we had a lot of help from other entrepreneurs and the community in general. So for me, that's always important to keep the doors open. If I always take a call from anybody. I help them, guide them in whatever way I can. And that's just forthcoming from me, just because I received that from many people who were starting. That, and just um, hopefully make up for all the time and spend good quality time now with my family.
Yeah, I was going to go straight to the family. I got a 11-year-old who's ready for me to go hit the slopes, and I got a 14-year-old that I didn't spend a lot of time with. They're like, "Oh, your kids don't speak Spanish." I'm like, "No, man, I was building Flash. Like, I could never, I didn't have the time to teach them."
Mm.
And I think I was doing an exercise with YPO a couple of weeks ago, and they're like, "Oh, well, what would you do if it could pay you the same as you make now," and stuff like that. And as I'm going through this, doing this day workshop, it looks like I enjoy helping people solve problems. And I'm gonna find how I can. That gives me a lot of energy, and I'm gonna figure that out. So I think that's what you're gonna see from me in the future.
I can't wait to see where that goes. And similarly, like you, as I went through this exercise of sort of jumping off the corporate, at day in and day out work life, I did a similar reflection for myself, and it sounds pretty close to what you got. Mine is that I enable others to achieve their potential. And that comes through investing, coaching, strategic advisory, whatever that is. But yeah, I think at that stage of your life, it shifts from what you're going to get for you and your family to how do you help others accomplish something amazing for themselves as well. All right, so I'm going to summarize just a little bit, and then I'll let you run out and get in the snow and go play. So, what you, Juan and Eliseo, have built, it isn't just a technology company; it's a case study in unreasonable humility. In the venture world, we talk a lot about grit and hustle, but we rarely talk about the courage that it takes to get out of your own way. You two founders had the conviction to say there's no plan B back in 2012. And then you had the maturity in 2016 to realize that Flash had to reach its full potential. It had to bring in other people. And you needed to prioritize the richness of the mission over the power of the title. And you ended up transforming an antiquated industry, not just because you had better tech, but because you had better partnerships along the way. That became pretty obvious. So from the Dominican Republic to the Pentagon to the Austin high-tech community, and back to the Dominican Republic, you proved that you have the right partner and had no safety net. So the impossible became inevitable for the two of you. So thank you very much for sharing your time. It's been amazing for me just to know you guys and to watch your journey along the way and to be a part of it in some small way. And look forward to staying connected with you guys and seeing what happens next for both of you.
Likewise. Thanks for having us.
And thank you, Kevin, for taking the risk on us super early on.
It was
Really
it was an easy decision. Good to see you guys. Thanks again. Enjoy the snow. We'll catch up. Hopefully the next time you're back in Austin, we'll be able to get together in person.
Sounds great.
Take care.
Looking forward to it.
See you soon. Bye-bye.